My name is Anita Moreau, 28 years old. If you had asked me 2 years ago to describe my life, I would have told you it felt like stepping into a picture frame. Everything was lit in warm colors, balanced, almost too perfect. I was married to Luke, a man who knew how to make strangers laugh and make me feel, at least in the beginning, like I was the only one in the room. We met at a mountain retreat organized by mutual friends. That weekend, bonfire sparks floated up into the night like tiny meteors, and Luke leaned close to me with stories that made my ribs ache from laughing. I remember thinking, this is how love is supposed to start. Suddenly, effortlessly, with a flame you don't have to coax. A year later, he proposed on a picnic blanket by the coast, the sea spread out behind him like a stage curtain waiting to rise. I said yes, without hesitation. My parents adored him. My mom said he had old-fashioned manners with modern charm, and my dad claimed he was the kind of man who could steady a ship in a storm. His parents, Evan and Vivian, welcomed me as if I'd always been part of their circle. Vivian once held my hands across her kitchen counter and said, "You're like a second daughter to me." Evan loved to bring wine and bad jokes whenever we visited. When Luke and I bought a modest little starter home in the suburbs, both families pitched in for the down payment. We thought we were building something solid. For a while, everything was good, really good. Then I got pregnant. At first, Luke was thrilled. He kissed my stomach, whispered about our baby, swore he'd be the best father. "I'll work extra hours," he promised, "so our little one never wants for anything." And he did. At least that's what he said. He started working late nights at his IT job, coming home with tired eyes and a phone that never seemed to leave his hand. I tried to tell myself it was normal. We were adjusting. This was how a man prepared for fatherhood, by providing. But small things began to gnaw at me. He forgot to ask how I was feeling after I'd spent an afternoon vomiting. He brushed off my worries when I fainted trying to scrub the bathtub. He started to treat my exhaustion like laziness. One evening, about 6 months into my pregnancy, I was lying on the couch, clutching a pillow against the cramps twisting in my stomach. The kitchen was still dark, dinner untouched. Luke came through the door earlier than usual. His eyes immediately darted to the counter. "You're just lying there?" His voice wasn't angry yet, more incredulous, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I sat up, pressing my palm to my temple. "I've been nauseous all afternoon. I just needed a minute." He dropped his bag with a thud, glanced toward the stove. "You've been home all day, Anita. There's nothing ready. I worked 10 hours, and this is what I come home to?" The words stung sharper than they should have. "I'm growing a human being, Luke. I'm doing my best." He let out a bitter laugh, opening the fridge. "Here we go. The I'm pregnant card again." I blinked at him, my throat tightening. "Are you kidding me?" "No, I'm not." He pulled out a beer, popped the cap, and leaned against the counter. "You've checked out. You're not working. You barely do anything around here anymore." For a second, the silence between us was so sharp it could have sliced the room in half. I thought of the nights I lay awake with back pain, the hours I spent folding tiny baby clothes alone, the appointments I went to without him. "So what do you want from me?" My voice shook, but I kept my eyes on him. "Do you want a wife or a full-time maid?" He shook his head as if I were the unreasonable one. "I want you to stop acting like carrying a baby gives you a free pass." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me just quieted. I stood, walked past him, and said evenly, "I'm going to stay with my parents. I need space. I need peace." He didn't reach for me, didn't even flinch. "Fine. Do whatever you want." That night I packed a suitcase slowly, carefully, as if each folded shirt was a goodbye. My dad arrived the next morning, silent as stone. He didn't lecture me, didn't ask questions, just carried my bag to the car and drove. When we pulled into their driveway, he squeezed my hand, his calloused fingers saying what words couldn't. "You're safe here." My mom had already prepared the guest room. She placed lavender lotion on the nightstand, smoothed the quilt, kissed my forehead like she used to when I was a child waking from nightmares. For the first time in months, I slept without my jaw clenched. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I sent Luke one update about the baby, a simple text about a doctor's visit. He never replied. I told myself I wasn't surprised, but the silence dug under my skin like a splinter. Still, I tried to believe it was temporary, that he was stressed, overworked, maybe even ashamed of how he'd spoken. But sometimes at night, lying awake in my old bedroom, I wondered if there was something more in those late nights of his. a part of his life I hadn't been invited into. I buried the thought quickly. Because the truth was too heavy, and because hope is a stubborn thing, it stays even when logic tells you to let go. And so, for a while, I chose peace over answers. But peace is fragile, and mine was about to shatter. The third week at my parents' house passed in a haze of folded baby clothes and peppermint tea. My mother fussed over me, my father mended the creaky hinges on my old closet door, and I told myself this was enough. Safety, quiet, the certainty that no one would raise their voice at me for failing to make dinner. Then one afternoon, as I was sorting tiny socks into drawers, my mom called from the foyer, "Anita, you have visitors." I froze. When I stepped into the living room, my heart jolted. Standing in the doorway were Evan and Vivian, Luke's parents. Vivian clutched a bottle of wine, her face softened with worry. Evan carried a grocery bag like a peace offering. "We're so sorry," Vivian said immediately, her voice thick. "We didn't know you weren't at the house. Luke never told us you left." Evan looked equally pained. "We stopped by, and when we didn't find you there, we pressed him. He admitted it eventually. I can't believe we had no idea." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My loyalty warred with my hurt. This was Luke's family, but they'd always felt like mine too. Vivian set the wine down and stepped closer, lowering her voice as though confession might break the room. "Anita, I remember pregnancy. I remember the fear, the exhaustion. You don't have to go through this alone." I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. Their sincerity stirred something dangerous in me, the temptation to hope. They stayed for over an hour, filling the silence with stories of Luke's childhood, how he once tried to build a treehouse with nothing but duct tape, how he used to sneak cookies from the pantry when Vivian wasn't looking. Evan cracked bad jokes. Vivian stroked my arm gently. I smiled where I could, nodded when I had to, but inside I was conflicted, because compassion from them reminded me of what was missing from him. 3 days later, Luke himself appeared on my parents' porch. No call, no warning, just the sharp echo of the doorbell on a humid afternoon. I opened the door to find him looking worn out, eyes ringed with sleepless shadows. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. Not the man I married, not even the man who yelled in the kitchen, but someone smaller, more fragile. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, almost stumbling over the words. "I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I didn't mean to make you feel alone." I crossed my arms, holding the doorway like a shield. "You didn't make me feel alone, Luke. You left me alone." His gaze dropped to the porch boards. "I know, I was overwhelmed, stressed, but I want to fix this." The words hung there too easy. Fix this. As though patching a crack in drywall. As though betrayal and absence could be smoothed over with one apology. I studied him, the man who once made me laugh until my ribs hurt, the man who now made me doubt my worth. I wanted to believe him, because believing was simpler than unraveling everything. But I'd learned something in the past few weeks. Hope needed boundaries. "I'll come back," I said carefully, "but only after the baby is born. I don't want the stress around my final trimester." He looked startled, but then nodded quickly, too quickly. "Of course, whatever you need. I'll wait." His eagerness unsettled me, like someone agreeing to terms without hearing the fine print. Still, I held my ground. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, one hand over my belly, feeling Lily's tiny kicks like muted drum beats. I whispered to her, "We'll be okay. I'll make sure we're okay." But in the dark, doubts pressed in like unwelcome shadows. If Luke had hidden his temper for so long, what else was he capable of hiding? His late nights? His coldness? I didn't have proof, only intuition. But sometimes intuition is proof enough. The months crept forward. My belly grew round, heavy, my back aching with every step. My mom coached me through breathing exercises. My dad carried groceries as if they were made of glass. Luke sent the occasional text. Short, polite, perfunctory. "How's the baby? Need anything?" I responded when I had to, but I never let myself lean on him again. Then, on a rainy October morning, Lily decided she was ready. 14 hours of labor blurred into a tunnel of pain, sweat, and my mother's steady hand gripping mine. When Lily finally arrived, her cry was high and sharp, a note that split the storm outside. Luke stumbled into the room minutes later, disheveled, claiming traffic. He barely made it in time to hear our daughter's first cry. For a moment, when his eyes filled with tears as he saw her tiny body swaddled against my chest, I let myself believe, just for a second, that maybe things could change. Maybe fatherhood would wake something in him that marriage had smothered. Maybe this time he would stay. But deep down, in a place I hadn't admitted to anyone yet, I feared the truth. Some people don't change when life demands it. They only get better at pretending. We brought Lily home wrapped in a floral blanket that smelled faintly of hospital soap and hope. Her cries pierced through the quiet rooms like tiny alarms, reminders that life had permanently shifted. The first days blurred together in a fog of diapers, feeding schedules, and casseroles delivered by kind neighbors. Luke was tender at first. He cradled her as if she were glass, brushed damp hair from my forehead, whispered, "You're amazing, Anita." Those moments made me believe he had returned, the Luke I fell for, the one who lit up bonfires with laughter. But his phone never stopped buzzing. Even during late-night feedings, even when I stood in the shower with milk leaking through my shirt, he sat on the edge of the bed answering Slack messages. "Just need to stay in the loop," he muttered, as though his job would collapse without him. By the second week, he was back at work full-time. That's when the real test began. Lily had colic. She screamed until her tiny body went purple, inconsolable for hours. She wouldn't latch properly, leaving me pumping milk in 20-minute bursts just to keep up. My body ached, bleeding, sweating, and sleepless. I hadn't had more than 2 hours of continuous rest in days. Luke, meanwhile, kissed her head once in the morning, handed me a travel mug of coffee, and left for the office. "You've got this, babe," he'd say lightly, as if encouragement could patch over abandonment. But I didn't have it. I was drowning. Some nights I fell asleep in the rocker, Lily still pressed to my chest, both of us damp with tears. Other nights, I reheated soup and left it on the stove for Luke, only for him to walk in at 9 or 10, glance at the pot, and raise an eyebrow. "Soup again?" His voice dripped with disappointment. "It's the best I could do," I whispered once, throat raw. "She hasn't stopped crying since noon." He sighed, shaking his head, and poured himself a bowl without another word. The exhaustion hollowed me. By the end of the first month, I barely recognized the woman staring back from the bathroom mirror. Hair unwashed, eyes shadowed purple, lips cracked. My reflection looked less like a mother and more like a ghost. Then came the conversation that made my stomach drop. "You know my parents are coming next Saturday," Luke said one morning while knotting his tie. "I'd appreciate it if you actually planned something decent." I blinked at him, swaying with Lily on my shoulder. I didn't forget. Vivian texted me not to stress about food. She said they're just excited to see Lily. He gave a sharp laugh. "That's just her being polite. I don't want them thinking you can't manage a simple lunch." A lump rose in my throat. "I'll do my best." That week was chaos. Lily's sleep deteriorated further, and I relied on caffeine and dry shampoo to survive. The night before the visit, I attempted a pasta bake, but halfway through, Lily wailed so violently I abandoned the dish in the oven, smoke curling by the time I remembered. By morning, I was shaking with fatigue. Luke left early, tossing a warning over his shoulder. "Remember, no store-bought junk. We need to look like we've got it together." As if appearances were more important than survival. Desperation drove me to a local gourmet deli. I ordered marinated olives, rosemary focaccia, truffle hummus, imported cheeses. I even bought tulips from the florist down the street. It wasn't homemade, but it was beautiful, arranged on platters like artwork. When the doorbell rang, I braced myself. But instead of judgment, I was met with warm smiles. Vivian stood on the porch with a bottle of wine, Evan with a bag of food from the very same deli. "Surprise," Vivian chirped. "We thought you could use reinforcements." Relief flooded me so suddenly I almost cried. They swept inside, Vivian scooping Lily from my arms with practiced ease, Evan unpacking store-bought appetizers like it was the most natural thing in the world. "This is perfect," Vivian said, beaming at the spread. "I wish someone had done this for me when Luke was born." Her gaze softened when she caught sight of the dark circles under my eyes. "You haven't slept, have you?" "Not really," I admitted. "Then go," she urged, kissing Lily's head. "Lie down. We've got her. We've got the food. Rest." I didn't argue. I lay down on the couch, lulled by the sound of Evan humming and Vivian cooing at her granddaughter. For the first time in weeks, I drifted off peacefully. The slam of a door jolted me awake. "Anita, are you seriously sleeping right now?" I sat up, groggy. Luke stood in the entryway holding the platter I'd arranged. His expression was a mask of disdain. "What are these? You bought appetizers? Are you kidding me?" My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" I asked you to cook. My parents are here, and this is what you give them? He shook his head, storming toward the kitchen. I'll throw this crap away and make something myself. Wait, Luke, I started, panic rising. A calm, steady voice cut through the tension. She's not lying. Evan stood in the doorway, a glass of wine in hand. Vivian hovered behind him, Lily nestled in her arms. Luke froze, confusion flickering. What? Evan stepped forward. We bought those appetizers. Vivian picked them out. I paid for them. We figured Anita would be exhausted, so we wanted to help. The room went still. Luke's jaw clenched. He tried to laugh it off. Oh, I just thought she didn't think. Don't, Evan snapped, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. Vivian's expression chilled. You just assumed. And in assuming, you insulted your wife in front of your daughter. Luke's face paled, his eyes darting between his parents and me. The silence was heavy, electric. I felt both vindicated and exposed, as if the walls of our marriage had suddenly become glass, and everyone could see the cracks. But none of us knew then that the real fracture hadn't been revealed yet. The air in the living room thickened with the weight of what Evan and Vivian had just said. Luke's jaw tightened, his hands balled into fists at his sides. I stood rooted near the couch, still groggy from my nap, heart pounding as though I'd been running. Vivian shifted Lily against her shoulder, rocking gently, her voice calm but cold. You didn't ask, Luke. You just accused. Do you have any idea how that feels? Luke rubbed the back of his neck, trying to conjure a laugh, but it came out hollow. I'm just stressed. I didn't mean anything by it. Words matter, Evan said, his tone firm, almost parental in a way that wasn't just about Luke being his son. Especially in front of your wife, especially in front of your child. Luke opened his mouth to reply, but then, buzz, buzz. The sound sliced through the tension like a blade. His phone, left on the dining table to charge, lit up in the silence. Everyone's eyes flicked toward it instinctively. Vivian, closest, glanced at the glowing screen. For a split second, her expression froze. Then it hardened into something unfamiliar, a look I had never seen on her face before. She reached for the phone slowly, as though handling something venomous. Luke's head snapped toward her. Mom, don't! But it was too late. Vivian's voice, low and trembling with control, filled the room. Who's Julia? The words hit me like a stone to the chest. Luke blanched. It's not just... Vivian read aloud, her voice steady but quivering underneath. You left your sweatshirt and lighter here. Can't wait for next time. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? My voice sounded alien, flat. Luke took a step forward, palms out as if he could calm a storm. It's not what you think. Vivian's eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. Then explain it. It's someone from work. It's not serious, he stammered, his gaze flicking to me, then back to his parents. Evan's face darkened, his voice a low growl. Luke, are you having an affair? My stomach twisted, waiting for his denial, for him to slam the door on the possibility. But he didn't answer. His silence stretched, suffocating, until it broke me. How long? My voice was steady, frighteningly so. Luke's Adam's apple bobbed. He swallowed hard. Since you went to stay with your parents, I didn't mean for it to go that far. We were fighting. I was lonely. Evan cut him off, his words slicing sharper than any blade. She was pregnant with your daughter. What kind of man abandons his wife in her final months and sneaks off to someone else's bed? Vivian's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. We trusted you. We defended you. Luke's voice cracked, defensive. You don't understand. I was alone too. She left me. I stepped forward, fury igniting in my chest. I left to survive. You think I wanted to? You made this house unbearable. You made me feel like a burden for carrying your child. He raked a hand through his hair, frantic. I'm sorry, okay? It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. Her name's Julia, right? I asked flatly. His eyes widened. How do you... Your phone lit up before you were too busy accusing me of laziness to notice, I said, my voice like steel. Vivian's hands dropped to her sides. Her voice was quiet but devastating. You said you wanted to be better, that you wanted to fix things, but tonight you insulted your wife, lied again, and now this. Luke opened his mouth, but Evan raised a hand. Don't. Not another word. He turned to me. Do you want him out? The question lodged in my throat for only a second before clarity settled over me. Yes, tonight. Luke's eyes widened. You're kicking me out of my own house? You forfeited your place here, I said firmly. I won't share a roof with someone who disrespects me in front of our child. Evan didn't hesitate. He disappeared down the hall and returned moments later with a duffel bag. He dropped it at Luke's feet, the sound final, like a gavel striking wood. "You'll stay with us until this is resolved." Luke looked at his mother, desperate now. "Mom, please." Vivian's response was simple, quiet, and devastating. "You're our son, but that doesn't make you right." The words landed heavier than anything else that night. I picked Lily up from her bassinet, her tiny face serene, unaware of the storm raging around her. I held her close, breathing in her warmth as Evan guided Luke toward the door. I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving the house in silence. My knees trembled, but I didn't collapse, not this time. Because deep down, I realized something. Survival wasn't the same as living. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward freedom. 3 days later, the doorbell rang again. I half expected to see Luke on the porch, ready with another apology rehearsed in the mirror. But when I opened the door, it was only Evan and Vivian. "No, Luke," Evan said, his voice clipped. In his hands was a manila folder. "He signed everything?" My pulse quickened. "Everything?" Vivian stepped inside, her expression softer than her husband's. Custody, divorce terms, child support, clean and simple. She set the folder on the dining table with quiet finality, as though laying down a verdict. I stared at it, the edges of the papers glowing under the afternoon light. My heart thudded. "And this?" Vivian added, pulling out a white envelope. She extended it to me. I hesitated. "What is it?" "From us," she said gently. "So you don't have to struggle because of what he did." Inside was a check, large enough to buy months of breathing room. My throat tightened. "I can't take this. I don't want your money." "You're not taking ours," Evan said firmly. "You're taking it from people who believe in protecting the innocent. Luke will repay every penny." Vivian nodded. "We've taken over his salary, his accounts. No more online splurges, no more credit cards. He'll live on a weekly allowance. Enough to get to work, eat, nothing more. The rest goes here, to Lily." My fingers trembled as I clutched the envelope. "And Lily's trust fund?" Evan's jaw set. "We'll make sure it's paid every month, on time. If he falters, he answers to us." I lowered into a chair, staring at the documents. They weren't just legal, they were merciful. They were a shield I hadn't dared dream of. I signed that afternoon, my name steady on each page. Luke didn't come, didn't call, didn't fight. I didn't expect him to. Later, I learned Julia had vanished the moment the divorce became public. Ghosted him like he had ghosted me. At work, word spread quickly. HR reassigned him to back office admin. No promotions, no bonuses. He moved into a basement-level unit near a bus line. A life scaled down, stripped of comfort. Vivian texted me on the 1st of every month confirming the child support deposit. She never missed a message. Meanwhile, Lily and I stayed with my parents through winter. My mother took midnight bottle shifts, her hand warm on mine when exhaustion blurred my eyes. My father fixed up my childhood room, patched the peeling paint, brought in a rocking chair. The house echoed with soup simmering on the stove, folded laundry in neat stacks, quiet laughter at the dinner table. Some days I couldn't laugh myself, but the sound of my parents' voices reminded me I wasn't broken, just healing. By spring, I returned to work. My boss welcomed me with no questions, just a flexible schedule and a bouquet of daisies on my desk. My colleagues left sticky notes that said, "You've got this, one meeting at a time." I found a small 2-bedroom apartment near a park, sunlight pooling through the windows in the mornings. Lily's room filled slowly with secondhand books and oversized stuffed animals lined up around her crib like soft sentinels. One afternoon, while she napped, I stood in the kitchen and realized the silence didn't ache anymore. It wasn't empty. It was mine. Friends asked if I missed being married. "No," I'd tell them. I miss the version of myself I imagined I'd become. I miss the fairy tale I held on to too long. But the marriage itself? I don't miss apologizing for being exhausted. I don't miss cooking while crying. I don't miss being treated like a failure for not serving a hot meal on 2 hours of sleep. They'd ask if I regretted anything. Yes, I'd admit, I regret shrinking. I regret softening every edge of myself to avoid conflict. I regret making excuses for a man who didn't deserve them. But there were things I didn't regret. I didn't regret leaving. I didn't regret choosing peace over pretense. I didn't regret packing a suitcase, taking my daughter, and never looking back. And most of all, I didn't regret saying, "This ends here." Because it did, and I was still standing, stronger, freer, and finally whole.